Good morning. I'm here with Tara Raber, who is First Lady Ann Scott's Chief of Staff. Thank you for meeting with us, Tara.
Thank you for having me.
I guess to start off, how did you get your start in PR?
Well, I started out in journalism, as a lot of PR professionals do. My degree is in print journalism, and I started as a newspaper editor, copy editor, and then moved into PR. I started as an intern at one of the top PR firms, Fleishman Hillard, and worked my way up there for over 6 years. I was promoted 5 times in 6 years, so it advanced really quickly. And then I started to do, I wanted to do more policy-focused work. I moved to DC, and I worked for a nonprofit doing healthcare policy communications. And then I got more into politics and started working for the Republican National Committee. I worked for the McCain 2008 campaign, and then that's when I started my own firm.
More specifically than the continued use of the internet, what are the main differences in public relations between when you started, when you were interning, and then now?
I think that the fundamentals of PR are always the same. It's about your interaction with the press, and the internet is certainly changing who the press is, who is interpreting your PR and translating it to the public. But I think that what I've learned has changed. When I started as an intern, there's a lot of cold call pitching that you do with the press, and a lot of people can be very effective doing that type of cold call pitching. But as you sort of advance in your career and you focus on an area in your a subject matter that you're focused on, then you can start to build relationships with reporters, and that's when you can be really effective at public relations. So it becomes more than enticing them with the story idea, and more about informing them and educating them and sort of building an interest in your client or your topic or your news item, so that they can buy into that and then write a story that's more substantial.
Yeah, that sounds great. How big of a role does the press release play in your PR work?
I think that the press release is one of those fundamentals that evolves but will always be around. So it's very helpful for releasing breaking news that you would want to release to a large audience of press. But I think that it also has a limited role. The building of relationships and sort of seeding a story with a reporter can sometimes be a lot more effective if you can just have a conversation or an email that informs them of something, instead of putting it out sort of as a blanket press release, sort of throwing it out there and hoping that it sticks, and that what you are hoping to communicate is understood and then translated by the press. And it's better sometimes just to have a conversation.
So you're saying sometimes a press release isn't needed if you have those relationships that you built with reporters.
Exactly. I think a press release is sort of like a press conference, where if you have a set statement that you want to say or deliver, a press conference is usually the most effective medium. But if you want to provide more in-depth information, more background, then you probably want to use something different than a press release.
Do you use the social media release in your work?
Yes, I became acquainted with social media release as the regular release. Traditional press release evolved, and I think as more and more people are online and the press are using the internet as a search engine for information background, that it becomes more increasingly important. It can be, the great thing about a social media release is that it lives online, and if you do a Google search at any time, then that can come up as part of a regular news or internet search. So it's sort of like you're creating the news without the media even being involved. It's a great tool.
Okay. How probable is it that you receive a social media release in your work?
I think that even as a layperson who might do regular internet searches, you can stumble upon a social media release anytime, and you have the information on that company or that news item, and it can be very helpful for information that you're gathering. I think that you probably happen upon a social media release more often than you might think.
So, like, do you have any specific social media releases that stand out to you as being really dynamic or innovative?
I think that ones that use what they call multimedia release, where you might have a press release that's in maybe a DocStock or Scrib. Those are sites that house documents online that are searchable. They also incorporate web, or you can incorporate your Twitter account, you can incorporate your Facebook account, bringing all the pieces of social media together into one press release so that you're being very dynamic and providing the press and the public with all of your information at the same time, video, photos, any supporting information. It can be very helpful.
What do you think social media means for PR professionals?
I think social media has really changed the world of PR. I think some PR professionals are very slow to adopt it, focusing on their traditional PR and then having a smaller shop that did online media, social media. And then a lot of very dynamic firms adopted it very quickly, and we're seeing how you could spread a message very quickly and not necessarily have to do the cold call pitching or convincing the press to cover your story. You can create the news online simply by using the tools that are available, and use your own words to get the message out, which is one of the great things about social media, because you can stick with your messages, keep your client's message in the online media, go directly to your public without the press in between, which is very exciting for PR.
Okay, wonderful. How do you break through the clutter to get your messages out? Do you have any specific tricks or tactics you use?
Well, I think that PR professionals need to remember that social media is still just a conduit for getting the message out, and that the traditional way of creating excitement about a news item, using creative ways to make it newsworthy, make it, all of the things that make something news proximate, timely, newsworthy, are still relevant to PR. So aligning it with a current event, or making it bigger, better, faster, still apply. And then social media can just be a better way, an easier way to reach the public with that news.
What is the most creative tactic you've used to reach out to the media or to the public?
I probably have a couple examples of things that I've worked on in the past. One of the most interesting and exciting things that I've done to raise awareness for a client really was a basic PR tactic. We wanted to, my client was the Washington Apple Commission, so we were raising awareness for apples, and which is something that's very basic. How do you create something exciting about apples? So we found a chef from the Northeast, from Washington, who focused on local ingredients, and he had just come out with a new cookbook. So right away you have something newsworthy, a new book that then you can link to your product, which is not new. And then we created a New York City media tour where we took him sort of on a celebrity tour with his cookbook, and we wanted to do sort of a sommelier type approach to apples, as you would like a wine tasting. We did an apple tasting with different apples in New York, and we went to all of the TV shows and all of the magazines in New York, and not as a way of getting on TV, but as on background. So we sat down with the Food Network chefs and gave them a tasting of all the apples. We met with Latest Home Journal and the Oprah magazine and Redbook and all of them, and gave them a tasting, all of their food editors a tasting of the apples, and then all of the TV shows, not on TV but on background. And then that's the type of thing where then they can run with the story when they want to. You're not actually pitching a story, but you're sort of educating them on a product that then they can use in future stories.
Right, and if I'm reading that correctly, it's a little bit like social media, where you build those relationships and you're not hoping to sell right now, but in disseminating your information through those relationships,
exactly,
it'll come back to you later.
And you're linking to something that's a little bit more newsworthy, such as a new book, or an exciting author, or a chef. So you're not actually selling your product cold, you're putting it in a greater context.
Yeah, wow, that sounds like a great campaign.
One other one example I wanted to share, I worked with Walmart on a project during February, which is also Healthy Heart Month. And one of the great ways, I think, for PR to become newsworthy is to do something that's good or charitable. That's all, I think the press are always looking for a story that's more feel good, and, the sticky baby face story is how I learned it in journalism school, where if you have a sticky face baby with gum or ice cream or candy, they'll always make it on for, the front page. But if you have a feel good story like that, the press are more likely to cover it. And we did free heart health screenings at every Walmart and Sam's Club store nationwide, and then put together a PR campaign around that, where we divided up all the markets, and we actually did some more traditional pitching, but we offered Walmart pharmacy managers as our spokespeople. So we had a spokesperson in each market, and then just blasted it out nationwide. So we had coverage around the country on this story, all over the place.
Wow, that sounds great. What have you found to be the most effective vehicle for social media in all of your experience?
I think Google is still the most effective social media tool. If you can get your information online in a social media release, or if you use one of the document sharing websites to post a background paper or a statement, that information will live online and it is searchable through Google. So you don't necessarily need to have a news story for people to read it. You can put your information in your own words and clients' words, using the messages that you want to share, and it can be found by the public.
Great. Well, thank you so much for meeting with us, Tara. And I'm sure we've all learned a lot, and are really happy to have had you with us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure, and good luck with your PR class.
Thank you.